I just kind of want to speak on this really fast for tonight while it's on my mind. Racism has not never left since Martin Luther King and since Malcolm X and since the Civil Rights Movement. Racism has actually gotten worse since those times because we as Black people do not understand how we've been programmed and colonized in America and all over the world. They have taught us segregation instead of integration. We still have segregation in every area that we think we're integrated, when really we're locked, we're imprisoned, and rather enslaved on so many levels, from jail to jobs to school organizations. We're enslaved. We're suggested to ignore our culture, ignore who we are as a Black people, ignore who we are as what they considered African Americans. Let's make an example, is that how we're segregated is that we still live in marginalized areas and neighborhoods where we'll see suburban neighborhoods where Caucasians live and where they have wealth. And then you look at the Black neighborhoods where there's drugs and there's violence and there's poverty and there's security and high surveillance in the areas that we consider as our culture. We need to be able to concentrate on reparations. Anything that will give us gain rather than loss. Reparations is a way for us to put inside of a bill that we want land, that we also need checks from the things that we have done to building America. We need checks. We need our money back. We need to be compensated. We need to have a strong mind to be united in this time and in this hour. God never said that we didn't have to be united as Black people. We love white people, but we also know that white people should love us enough to stand with us when it comes to reparations, when it comes to racism, to hold their people accountable, to hold their race accountable. Because a lot of white people may not be racist, but they do not hold their race accountable for racism. It's important to hold your race accountable for racism because racism still exists. Even in the fact, let's talk about Dayton, Ohio. Let's talk about Miller Lane. Let's talk about Butler Township. Let's talk about those areas that have changed. I myself lived in Northland when I was a young teenager and had a young child, teen mom. I lived in Northland on base income to be able to maintain a lifestyle of being independent and still going to high school while I was 16, 17, 18 years old. Achieving a cosmetology license, being a teenage mom, not having a high school diploma, but I was still able to maintain a cosmetology license that I still maintain and hold today. But when I lived in that area, I did not see or pay attention to that it was marginalized. I didn't pay attention to why people sell drugs, why there is violence, why sometimes police can be involved with the drugs and the crime. Why does drugs are even able to get into the neighborhood? Just like Freeway Rick Ross says, the real Rick Ross, he says that drugs we're not wealthy enough to be able to get drugs from the foreigners that bring the drugs over here. So where do the drugs come from? How are the drugs even deposited into the impoverished neighborhoods without somebody that could be Caucasian or somebody that could be not? Get out of here, Heaven. Get out. My dog is doing stuff. We don't have that type of power to be able to. That's why when you see rappers, they'll say like, I know the Colombians, or I know the mobs, or I know somebody that's from out of the country. It takes a lot of pull to be able to get to those high levels to sell drugs. And still, you're going to get busted. Still, you're not considered rich. We need to stay facts. Drug dealers don't have a lot of money. I always say this, the more money that you get, the more money you lose because you want to sell drugs. I'm against that for my Black people because they end up in jail. They end up in jail for a long time for selling drugs to their own people. They don't sell it to Caucasians. They don't sell it to any other race but their own people. And we as a black nation should be against that as well. We should be able to talk to the drug dealers that are black men and be able to get them to come away from those things, because those things are set up to enslave us and to keep us in prison and to keep us trapped with wanting name brand things and wanting to have on name brand this and that, which is still the white man's name. Okay. Again, if white people love us, then they would be accountable for the racism that we see all over the world. I get sick of it. As a citizen, if I'm an American citizen and this is a human race, why am I always put in a marginalized, and I live in a marginalized area where I'm always under surveillance? Walmart, Butler Township has completely changed from the point that I don't want to go there late at night. You don't want to catch yourself in Butler Township on Miller Lane past 9, 10 o'clock at night, because you have the police over there that are on high surveillance. I don't know what kind of crime has happened in that area, but I think that is too extreme, because if you go to Oakwood, you're going to see high surveillance. You can't even go back and forth to where you need to do in Far Hills or Oakwood, because there's high surveillance of police that are pointing out black people. They're marginalize us. They try to keep us out of their Kettering neighborhoods or whatever neighborhoods that they consider suburban. And this happens all over the world. Even in literature, it proves that the high places that are suburban are always on high surveillance and protected and have great, clear, clean air. But then when you go to consider the west sides or the south sides or the areas that's at the bottom, they're considered to be marginalized. Their air is not perfect. Their water's not perfect. Their prices are higher. The Arabs, the foreigners take over their corners, take over their businesses. We as a black people, if we're going to protest, we need to protest against on these properties like Walmart, for instance, where we'll have black people that look just like us, feel like us, part of our culture, but come against us like we the enemy, like we're a thief, like we're going to steal. People do steal, but why do they steal? Just the same way as why do Caucasian has a big, high percentage of molestation and rape and pedophilia. But no one talks about that. No one talks about that. Or that the government, that half of the people that are in the government do so much wicked behind closed doors, they don't talk about that. Did we forget that our former president, he was known for smelling girls? We seen it with our own eyes, him smelling their hair and feeling on them. And yes, we voted for him. But do we see that he don't love black people? He has not done nothing for us, from the student loans to anything of reparations. We need reparations, President Biden. And we don't want to get on Vice President Kamala Harris, who definitely just said out of her mouth that she's not going to just do anything for black people. No, she's not going to do anything just for black people. But we as black people felt like because she's considered black that we should vote her in. You know, we need to think about what we do to each other. We need to think about who really be for us. Yes, I have strict and sharp words because there's things that need to change in this world because sort of in the African culture. Black people, if we were united, things will more likely change than if we weren't united. Because you have so many black people that work on jobs. They're so used to working, that they don't never have no time for themselves, that they don't never have no time to mingle and mangle unless they're rich, unless they have a lot of money. And that's a problem. We shouldn't have to have a lot of money to have fun, to relax. That means we're still working to build the white man. We don't build ourselves. We don't build our culture. We don't build within each other. We are the segregation. We have allowed these systems to segregate us, and we're blind to it. We don't see it. We don't understand what's happening to us in our education. A lot of black people don't get their education because of the demons and the masters that are ahead of the education, that sit there as it's hard to say what it's called. A person that's like I'll get back to it, but it's a master. It's a person that sits above everything and is there, put there for a reason. See, when the devil was kicked out of heaven, angels was kicked out with him. His whole agenda is to persecute the Jews. His whole agenda is to persecute anybody who came from the line of David, anybody who came from the line of the covenant that God had chosen. Okay, there's still a chosen generation. Yes, the Lord said, nor Gentile nor Jew. But there is still, he said, I still know those who are Jews and those who say that they are not. So, and that's in Revelation. And I can't wait till the Lord come back. But in the meantime, what are we going to do about racism? What are we going to do about it? It's very important that we recognize racism, that we identify it under the law, under discrimination against the color, against, now, you know what I'm saying, what they're trying to do is they're going to say that you're discriminating against LGBTQ instead of saying you're discriminating against black people. And a lot of times some of these black people is not even LGBTQ, but they'll be LGBTQ just to be accepted in a society, just so that when it comes under the law that they can get rights. What is up to the heterosexuals that still need to be protected under the law, that still need to be protected under the Constitution? The only way that we can be protected under these certain laws and certain constitutions under the 13th or 14th Amendment is that we understand that we need reparations. We need amendments. We need changes to the Constitution. We need changes concerning us as black people, that we no longer we should have some kind of authority when it comes to racism. There's no way that you should be able to go to a store. My experience going into a store where you now have no cashiers. Now they have systems to where you scan out your own groceries. And then when you scan out your own groceries, you have the cameras that'll try to say that you're stealing. I have the guy come over and he tried to scan something that I scanned twice. I'm no dummy. I know how to scan every single thing. And if I feel like I didn't scan it, then I'll ask the person to come over. He came over on his own and looked up the camera right in front of me. Looked the camera up to see if I had stole something. Obviously, he felt like I stole something. So he rescanned it. And when he seen that it was already on there, that's when I let him have it. Look, I don't have to steal. That's not who I am. So to see a black person racial profile me makes things worse in life for me. It makes things worse in life if you're being racial profiled by your own people, because they're trained to do that. It doesn't matter if Northland is there. It doesn't matter if Northcrest is there. It doesn't matter. It's still a stereotype. And even if it's violence and poverty, instead of doing something against the violence and poverty, the poverty is the result of why we have so much violence. So why doesn't nobody do anything about poverty? Yet we need reparations. We need to understand that we need wealth. We don't need you blowing up our communities. We need to be able to have these things in life. We need to be able to have them so that we can have something for ourselves. We always live in these communities where we get to go and see Arabs driving Audis and Range Rovers and Mercedes-Benz, and they go into the hood and build multi-million-dollar businesses while we sit here and pay them time after time and still don't have no wealth. Wake up, black people. When will we stop? The only way that we can stop some of these things is that we stop giving to them. We have to stop giving to them. There needs to be a time where we understand the laws and that we know how to get on properties after we have gotten certified and after we have got approval to protest on businesses, that we protest that we will no longer shop at your place if you want to continue to treat us like we're thieves, like we're burglars. It's not our fault that there's violence, but it's violence all over. So it's a hypocritical way of how to deal with things, because you're so busy surveillance marginalized areas that the ones that's in the suburban areas are easy to go do mass shootings, because you're not surveillancing them, and they know that. Just like you go into an organization, a job, or a university where they make sure that they have 2 black people at least. They have the 2, what's the rule? 2/3 or 5/6. However, that rule applies today. It has never changed. That rule applies within the job, within the school setting, all of that, which basically means that you can have 2 people that could work on a job, and then it's not considered being racist. You can have only 2 to 3 people inside of a school setting, and it's not considered racist. We need to change the things that are going on in the world, and I'm here to speak on it. Peace.
Don't ever change for anybody. Don't ever trade your soul. Don't even listen to him. He don't know nothing at all. Try not to get too involved, but really it's breaking my heart how you keep changing for him. Never forget who you are. You butterfly, you're a butterfly. Butterfly, wings spread, just let it fly. Butterfly, butterfly. What is life without brightness? Be a light. You were never quiet, never so shy. Now you're so serious all of the time. Show me that smile, it's not too late to reinvent yourself. Ooh. Bust out your cocoon, spray on your perfume, and go enjoy your new point of view. There's no way you can lose, the world works for you. Now that you're